Hi, welcome to Basic Public Speaking, and this is your Professor Christy Thomas. How is everyone doing? So, this video is over using visual aids or presentational aids with speeches. Your second main speech will be due during week 8, which is just coming around the corner, and it's an informative speech, but it's a how-to process speech. And then what the main requirement for this speech is that you use visual aids. So we're going to chat about using visual aids in speeches. This is when you go to look at documentation and PowerPoint presentations. This is chapter 11 in the paperwork. So, as always, there's information, both documentation and PowerPoint presentation. I'm just kind of filling in some gaps and kind of elaborating on the use of visual aids in speeches. So, if you see me look off camera, I'm checking out my notes. Let's talk visual aids. What are the functions of visual aids in speeches? Let's try it this way. I got my book, my notes. They're to assist with thinking, encourage retention, excite multiple senses, engage the body and create interest, or to simplify complexity. All right, it's pretty straightforward. We use visual aids to help get our point across, to make complex ideas or explanations, simplify them, to engage all of our senses, not just hearing because we hear, but it's to engage visually, perhaps smells, depending, it's just really to get us engaged in it, to help simplify ideas and to help us visualize processes or ways of thinking or statistics and stuff. So let's get into this. There's all kinds of varieties when it comes to visual aids, folks. All kinds. And you may not have as many, or they'll be in different forms since these will be recorded videos and not in person. But there's props, there's handouts, there's statistics, there's PowerPoint presentations, there's physical processes, and I'll elaborate on this stuff. And then there's the physical showing. All right, so let's break it down, the different visual aids. So props. You can bring in, props is props. If we were doing this in a classroom, this could be you coming in, perhaps you're showing us different styles of, how to work a soccer ball. So your prop would be a soccer ball. Perhaps you're telling us, again, these are examples I'm going to use if we were in class speaking to one another. It's a little different since this will be videoed. You'll video for me. But you can still do the process. It just will be shown on video and not in person. So a prop could be a soccer ball, or perhaps you're telling us how to, make a dessert, a secret family dessert. It doesn't have to be a secret family, but perhaps you have a staple dessert, or maybe your family is really big into football and there's special foods that you do during football, like sausage cheese balls or a certain dip. But perhaps you're showing, I say food, I use food a lot as examples, I'm sure you've caught on to that by now. But props would be the physical, what you physically hold. So soccer ball, you have the soccer. It comes to cooking, the props could be you bringing in utensils, or perhaps you're showing the ingredients that you use. Sometimes in person, when people use food, there's usually a finished product. And then they would do aids along with it, like pictures or videos, PowerPoint presentation to go along with it. But since you're recording, maybe you're setting up in your kitchen and you're doing a step-by-step process and you're editing your video. But whatever the case may be, props is the physical process of it. Maybe perhaps you're showing us how to do different braids. So your prop is maybe you have someone who's volunteered to sit in the video while you showed a braid, or maybe you have a mannequin head. I I didn't say tons, I got quite a few mannequin heads in my house because I have 2 daughters. So I've got ones that are Monster High, and I got Moana and Anna and Elsa. So I got mannequin heads. So, you know, that's a physical prop. Perhaps you're showing us how to make your wreath, or maybe you're showing us how to change oil in a car, and you may fit, since we get a little bit, you can get really interesting since you're recording for this class. The prop itself could be the car, and you're showing us the oil, and you're showing us, you know, the proper steps, and you're doing the video showing you how to on the car. So, you know, props is your physical. Pictures. Now, sometimes, especially if we were in an in-person classroom setting, it's not plausible to bring in props. The props are too big, there's too many, blah, 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 so forth. So this is where pictures come in. You would bring in pictures of the process. You know, perhaps it's changing a tire. So you show pictures of, this is what the flat looks like, this is what the tire, you know, that you need to loosen the nuts or the bolts. You know, you're showing us in its pictures. Now, here's the thing with pictures, folks. If pictures is something that you use in a presentation, in future classes or future work, you want to make sure they are easy to see. What do I mean by this? If you're in a large setting, and let's see if I have something close to me. Say you're using, we'll say this, I'm using this one from the book. This is back here. Now, in a large auditorium setting, do you think anyone's really going to be able to see this photo? So this is what I'm saying by large. You want to make sure that the pictures, so you want to blow them up if you're using pictures in a large auditorium setting. Now, for video purposes, you can create a video slideshow, or you can hold the picture as you're giving your description. Like, okay, the first step here is that you'll talk about it, and it's visual, but you want to make sure if you're using pictures that the visual is large enough. So within this, you need to know what your setting is, that the speech you're giving. Is it more of an informal classroom setting, or for us, it's more informal as it's a recorded video. But it's knowing your audience and knowing the setting to know what size pictures you need. So you really need to pay attention to that. We have pictures, and we've talked about props, data and statistical information. So this is just using pie charts or graphs or statistics or averages, and usually those can be found in a PowerPoint presentation, or you can put them on physical like charts. And again, if you're using physical charts, as in pictures or posters or whatever the case may be here, you want to make sure they're large enough for your audience to see. So it's knowing the formality and the setting of your speech to know what size to make graphs and charts and pictures. This is if you're using it in a physical form. Now, if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or a slideshow, that's pretty straightforward with technology. There's usually a setup, or you're already on the computer. So you can do a video editing thing where you're talking and then the picture comes up straightforward. Let's see what else we can talk about. Multimedia. That's really a lot what we're falling under, because we are in an online forum for this class. So our presentation aids are going to fall under the media world. It could be a PowerPoint presentation. It could be a video of you physically doing the process, which sometimes the processes are long, so you might have to do some editing. You know, chop it down some here, through here, or it might take a couple takes for you to get it done. Or you might record yourself in multiple takes doing each session and just kind of give us the condensed version. Well, giving me the condensed version. So with that, you really, if you end up editing your video for the presentational aid section, just make sure the sound and the movement and stuff is all kind of keyed up and ready to go. Now, if you were in a large presentation setting in a classroom or an auditorium or for work, it's making sure that the sound system's working, that everything's in play. Because sometimes the audio isn't on track with the visual, and that can be a little bit tricky. Or if you're giving the presentation and you have sound and moving images behind you, it's making sure it all works together and is cohesive. All right. So those are some of the different ways. Now, when you're using presentation, again, bigger is better. Why do I say that? If you're showing images and they're teeny tiny, it may be hard for someone to see, especially if you're in like an auditorium setting. If the first few rows of your audience are having issues, can you imagine what the back would have? Or in a classroom, if the first couple people that's the closest to you have to sit there and squint, can you imagine what the back row has to do? So it's making sure everything is large and in charge and easy to see. Clarify. What I mean, it's clarifying and simplifying. You want to make sure what you're saying, or if you're telling us a process, it's easy to follow. It may be a complex process, but it's choosing right terminology or breakdown of information to make it to clarify it as easy as possible for your audience. So if they're like, hey, I want to do that, they'll be able to follow your video or your presentation and know what to do. Think of how-to videos on YouTube, and there are tons. Try to find a video for something on YouTube on how to and not find it. That's the trick. So think of videos like that. Now, some are great. Some are a little on the shady side. And by what I mean by shady, it's not clarifying, it's not simple, it's hard to understand, it's hard to hear. That's what we're talking about here with clarification and simplification. So think of like, YouTube videos. Maybe you watch tutorials on YouTube. But that's what we're talking about here. So go big or go home. Bigger the better when it comes to visuals, making sure that it's easy to follow, it's not too complex, that you're bringing it down so that anyone can follow, making sure that your sound and your visuals line up with one another, keeping text easy to read. Now, you may love the really fancy fonts, or, there's all these different sites that have different fonts. You may love the crazy cool fonts or the specific theme fonts. When it comes to presentations and speeches and visual aids, keep that font easy to read. Don't make it teeny tiny. You want to make it visible. You want to make it legible, easy to go with, easy to read, easy to see. You don't want anyone like struggling to read your text because the text is done in this beautiful cursive calligraphy, or maybe typography since it's a font, but you get my drift here. You want to make it legible and easy to read. Colors. Okay, folks. This falls under a lot too with visual aids with slideshows and PowerPoint presentations and images or charts or anything. Using colors. Easy to read, easy to see. What do I mean by this? There are some color combos that are harder for people to see together, especially if you're colorblind. Now, some people are completely colorblind, and some have certain colors that they are colorblind to. They have issues with like blues and purples or reds and greens, and some people read colors differently than others. The great debate on social media a few years ago was, what color is that dress? Some people saw gold, some people saw pink. There's a shoe one out there too that people are like, that's teal. Some people are like, pink. So our minds read colors differently. So you don't want to go crazy and use 20,000 different colors on your visual aid. It's going to be too much. Or if you're using a lot of flashing, that can be, you see, just my hand, and that alone can be distracting and hard to focus. So Don't use tons of different colors on your presentations or visual slides or charts or anything like that. You want to make it easy to focus on and easy to read. All right, now let's talk about presenting our aids. So there's in person, but we are in the case of videos. Now, if you're in person, want to beware of handouts. Handouts can be distracting because you have people going through them, you hear the rustling of the paper, you know, maybe you can save handouts for additional information at the end of your speech for take-homes, but work on your timing. If you're using charts and you're using visual aids and you're using PowerPoints or slides or whatever the case may be, work on timing. Why again? This is why I give you so much time before speeches, so you can work on the speech and get it all the kinks worked out, especially on this speech since you are using visual aids. Now also, watch your back. What do I mean by that? This would be more so in a in-person setting, but if you've got information behind you, so say you have a chart or pictures, whatever the case may be, you have your visual aid behind you, some people will tend to turn and look, and then all we're getting is the back. We lose your voice, we lose your face, we lose so much because you're now speaking to the back and not to the audience. So really watch this in visual aids, and this can happen too while you're doing presentations. Now folks, this speech requires visual aid. I don't want just a PowerPoint presentation of just a PowerPoint presentation. I want to hear you speak. I want to hear you tell us how to do something. So you can't just turn in a PowerPoint presentation of slides. I actually want to hear you give the speech. So it's like more so recording yourself. That's not to say you can't use a PowerPoint presentation. You may just have to get really festive on how you record using both the information, because I want to hear you speak. I don't want to just watch a PowerPoint presentation that you put together for me. I'm sure it's a fabulous presentation, but I want to hear you speak, and I want to hear you explain the process to me. We've talked about text, we've talked about the visuals with colors and stuff like that. What I really want you to, it comes down to when it comes to doing speeches with presentational aids or visual aids, is practice the process. Practice with everything involved. Really give yourself time. Don't wait to the last minute. Don't wait past the due date to decide to do the speech. I'm giving you plenty of time to work out. So you practice the process on how you're going to present it with visual aids. Am I going to record? Am I going to do the actual physical process? Or am I just going to be like, so say I'm doing food. Am I just going to stand in my kitchen and show, well, this is the pan you need, this is the blender I use, these are the ingredients that I use? Are you going to show the mixing process, the pouring process, the cooking process? Or perhaps you're showing us how to make sausage balls. So do you show us your ingredients and then show the process? Okay, so again, guys, if you're really stuck on how to do process instructional videos, go to YouTube, watch YouTube videos, cooking videos, makeup videos, hair tutorials, car tutorials. You know, there are so many out there. Go and watch those. And that gives you an idea on how to really record the how-to process. It's a fantastic aid. And I might post some YouTube videos of how-to process that are quirky and fun. But folks, that's presentational visual aids. That's going to be used in your second main speech, which is the informative how-to process, which I'll go into details with that when that week's video. This video is for week 7. That speech will be due the end of week 8 prior to ACTC's fall break. All right, folks, so I hope you have a fabulous day, and and enjoying the fall weather. I love fall. Anyway, bye.